Okay, my name is Gary Dean and I'm a volunteer for the Collins Foundation. I can't get this close to World War II warbirds anywhere in Europe and operate and be part of the crew members. So I volunteer to come out. I take some time off, a few weeks at a time, fly across, join up with the tour, and we basically just get stuck into whatever needs to be doing. You can see behind me we have one of the B-17s, one of the few which are available for flight in the US, worldwide even. And what we're doing is we're giving history a future. The greatest generation you will have heard of, boys 20 years and younger, went to work in these things. Some of them didn't come back. And what we're doing is we're taking these aircraft around the tour of the US. We're taking flights, we're letting people up for the aircraft. And what I'll do is we'll go for a walk around in a minute and we'll pick up some of the interesting points about the aircraft. Right, well, as you can see at the moment we're standing in front of the B-17. This one's painted up to represent the very famous 909. Got some fantastic artwork on the front, the nose art. She's open for the public, so please come on down here, and once you get the entry fee you get the chance to go through and walk in and out of these aircraft. You can see what they're like, see the conditions, see all the controls, look at the guns, look inside the cockpit, etc. We'll do a walk around the aircraft in a minute and point out some of the points. Right, so standing in front of the 17, as you can see, powered by 4 radial engines. These are Wright Cyclones. Don't worry about the oil on the propellers or anything like that. It's a radial engine. All it's doing is it's marking its territory. What we'll do, we'll go for a walk around the outside of the aircraft. B-17 had a crew of 10 and carried approximately, I believe, around about 4,000 pound weight in bombs, but it would depend an awful lot on the mission you were doing, where you were going. Okay, and at the back of the fort we have yet another gun position. This is what the English would call tail end Charlie, a very lonesome place to be when you're in battle, because you've got to protect anything coming in to attack the back of the aircraft. You're kneeling on a stool. You've got 2 50 caliber machine guns which you're using with a very small sight on the back. Now you can actually access this from the inside of the aircraft, but you have to go past the tail wheel and it's a bit of a tight squeeze. Now try doing that in full combat gear. You've got to be pretty fit. There is an access door just down there which is about 1.5 feet by 2 foot in size, and if the worst comes to the worst and you have to get out in a hurry, you've got to crawl backwards, put your parachute on, because you can't wear a parachute in this gun position because it's too cramped, and then climb out of that hole. Like I said, adrenaline will kick in and it's amazing what you can do if you really have to. All the machine guns on the Fortress are .50 or 50 caliber machine guns. The average rate of fire is around about 80 plus rounds per minute, which is pretty good. Let's see, I don't know how many rounds they would carry. Think. I don't know.
So the tail gunner had one way of getting in and one way of getting out?
Pretty much.
And he had to be a very small person.
No, not too. Well, you're cramped. I mean, I could do it. You could do it. So it's an uncomfortable position because you're kneeling on there is a very small seat for you to kneel on, but again, it's very, very confined. It's very, very narrow because you're at the back of the airplane.
But we're going to do something in the outside.
Yep, no problems.
Maybe we can do one little thing inside.
Yeah, we can do that if you can handhold the camera. We can do the inside. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and here we have one of the 2 main entrances into the Fortress. The majority of the crew would get into this way, up the ladder, and you'd see them grab hold of there, throw their stuff in, grab hold, and then just jaunt up inside. That's one of the escape routes, if needed. Again, if everything goes pear-shaped and you're flying the aircraft and you have to evacuate. Farther along in front, we've got the waist gun on the other side. This one's farther forward than the one on the left-hand side of the aircraft. Again, all gun positions are manned by 50 caliber machine guns. These ones are manually pointed, so there's no hydraulics. It's like using a shotgun in your back garden. The turret, which is underneath, this is a Sperry ball turret. This is not manual. I believe it's hydraulically operated. That's fitted with 2 50 caliber machine guns and has a full 360 degrees rotation, so you can cover a whole area underneath the aircraft, and the guns will go from this position down to around about that position, so you've got a very good cone of fire for anything coming up underneath you. But you can see now that if you can take that ball turret out, the whole of the underside of the airplane is then unprotected. And on the right hand side we have the waist gunner. This is one of two gun positions. There's one on the other side but slightly farther back on the airframe, and that's so that the two guys have got good room to move around on the inside and swing those guns. If you had them side by side, the same location, it makes the fuselage very weak, but you end up with the gunners banging into each other, which is not what you want when you're about to take down a 109 or a 190. And on the Fortress, the majority of the crew, as you can see, were towards the front of the aircraft, with the pilot, co-pilot, the bombardier. You got the mid-upper gun turret, 4 Cyclone engines, developing around about 1200 horsepower each. The front gun turret you will see here. Okay, this is called the chin turret and was fitted to the G model Fortresses. Earlier versions, the F, etc., did not have this. And the guy that would be operating this gun turret sits up in front, and there's the equivalent of what we have nowadays as an Xbox controller in them for him to fire and operate the guns. 250 calibers, same as the other powered gun turrets. And then up in the front you've got the most important seat apart from the pilot. That's the bombardier seat up there. Directly in front of him you have a bomb sight. Now the bomb sight on this aircraft is called the Norden bomb sight, which was a top secret bomb sight developed during World War II. It was so secret that the actual gun sight was kept in a secure location away from the aircraft. When you're going out for a mission, the bomb sight would be collected under armed guard and delivered to the aircraft and then installed. Right, you'll see looking at the front of the aircraft there's a total of 2 50 calibers in the chin turret. We've got 2 manually operated 50 calibers on either side. Enemy aircraft, when they first came across the Fortress, would attack the front to try and take the pilot out. Well, that turned out to be very costly for them. Okay, so early head-on attacks against the Fortress turned out to be very costly for the attacking aircraft. Purely because of the sheer number of machine guns that could be brought to bear. You've got 2 50 calibers in the chin turret. We have 2 cheek mounted 50 calibers. There's the top turret which could turn around and face forward, so you could be in a position or up to 6 50 caliber machine guns pointing towards you. Now a 3-second burst, an interesting fact, a 3-second burst of ammunition fired from 6 50 calibers puts 21 pounds of bullet into the target coming towards you. 21 pounds will do your machine no good at all. The other way into the aircraft is this forward hatch. Now at the moment we're using a ladder to allow people to come in and go through the aircraft, but they wouldn't use ladders in World War II. If you've seen some of the old black and white World War II films, you'll see them throw their kit bag up, grab up and then just leapfrog inside there. You've got to be very fit. In the event of a bailout over occupied territory, the quickest option for the crew forward up in the cockpit would be to jump through the open bomb bay doors.
You know anything about these?
The details on here, a lot of these, can you see we've got radio operated Staff Sergeant. I think a lot of this, and you'll have to check on the Collins Foundation website, and it's got the details of who the names are. Some of them are plane sponsors, people that has donated money to keep the aircraft flying, and they, because they've generated a very generous amount, then they have the option to put the name of their relatives that flew in these aircraft in World War II on the side as a token, as a memorial.
You know anything about the engines?
I know they're Wright Cyclones. Okay. The engines on the Fort are the Wright Cyclone. It's a 9-cylinder radial engine, and it puts out around about 1,200–1,300 horsepower. You'll see at the moment that the propellers, we have one propeller in the vertical position with 2 up. Now before we go flying, because it's a radial engine, what we have to do is we have to pull the propellers through. We turn the engine the same way that it will work when it's under power, and we go through what we call 9 blades. So we push each propeller blade, pull the next one down, push it forward, and we do that 9 times. The reason we do that, this is a radial engine, it's not an inline, and we get oil will collect in the bottom 3 cylinders. Now if we don't move this over slowly, if we don't move the engine, or pull the engine through 9 blades, if you were to jump in and try and start the engine, you would have hydraulic lock. Oil is not compressible, and as the piston comes up towards the top of the cylinder, it will push the top of the cylinder off and wreck the motor.
So you had turn these.
Hand turn. When it was cold, it's potentially a 2-person job to move each propeller blade around because the oil is so thick. When we were pre-flighting this aircraft this morning at the last location, it was a struggle pushing the engine over.
Now, if you've got 4 engines, that means all 4 have to be the same.
Each engine has to be treated exactly the same. So what the ground crew would do, and the crew chief would make sure happened, is he would be responsible to make sure that each engine is pulled through 9 blades. And that's the same for on any radial engined aeroplane, whether it's a fighter or a bomber. Okay, and this is the bomb bay of the Fortress. If you take a look inside, we'll get the camera up and you can have a look, get an idea of the size. Bombs will be stored on either side. Okay, so we're now in the bomb bay, and you can see all this infrastructure here. Up at the top we have a catwalk, as it's called, the bomb bay catwalk, and it's the only way to access the front of the aircraft to the back of the aircraft. And it's a very narrow catwalk. It's not much wider than the span of my hand. Now it's very easy to walk through it at the moment wearing jeans and a t-shirt, but try doing it in combat conditions with your flak jacket on, your fur jacket, your fur boots, your oxygen mask, etc. You have to be very, very fit and very clever to get through. So that will give you access to the cockpit, and then at the back you go up into the radio room.
Nice job. Now this is one bomb bay door right here.
Yep. If you come in here, you can get some nice shots of the gear that makes it all work.
It's all hydraulic?
It's hydraulic. Hydraulic, or is it electric? It's electric.
And this is a bomb that is...
That looks like a 500-pound bomb. Okay, and we have in the bomb bay, this one's not a real bomb, but this is the real size. This is a 500-pound bomb which would have been dropped. Now the bomb bay doors are electrically operated. You have the electric motor here which operates the bomb bay doors, and you can see there's basically lots of cranks and pulleys that goes all the way down, and it takes around about 8 to 10 seconds to open and close the bomb bay doors. Because this is an old generation aircraft, all the controls were cable operated, not power assisted. So as you look through the aircraft, in fact you can see cables here on the sides of the bomb bay door. These are the control cables from the controls in the cockpit for the rudder and the elevator.
So they weren't operated by hydraulic in the back?
No, it's all cable. It's all cable.
And if the cables broke, that was it?
Yeah, pretty much. Introduce you to the B-24 Liberator. This particular aircraft is a J model, which is one of the later models, and is currently the only B-24 Liberator that is flying anywhere in the world. Major differences between the Liberator and the Fortress. First off, you can see that the wing is mounted on what we call the shoulder. So it's up towards the top of the fuselage, whereas the Fortress, it was a mid-mounted wing. Powered by 4 engines. These are twin-row radial twin Wasp engines. Similar horsepower, around about 2,000 horsepower. So when the pilot opens the throttles up for takeoff, you've got around about, let's see, 4, you've got 8,000 plus horsepower pulling you forward. Major differences between the two aircraft. You'll see straight away that the Liberator is a nose wheel aircraft. We'll just go towards the front of the aircraft. Okay, at the front of the Liberator, you see we have a slightly different design powered turret to on the Fortress. This is an Emerson electrically powered gun turret. Fires 2 50 caliber machine guns, same as on the Fortress, and in fact all the gun turrets on the Liberator have two 50 caliber machine guns. Directly below the front gun turret we've got the bomb aimer's position. He would sit underneath the front turret, and again this uses the same Norden bomb sight, the top secret bomb sight that was used on the Fortress. The Liberator you will see is a nose wheel aircraft. That means there's no wheel at the back. Now the wheel here is fully castering, so there's no steering. The pilots cannot control directly the front wheel on this, so they steer by differential brakes or using differential power on the engines. Okay, a pretty unique feature on the Liberator is the bomb bay doors. Now, you've seen earlier on the Fortress that the doors actually open up and from underneath and swing out. Well, these doors actually slide down and around and close underneath the aircraft. Two separate bomb bays in the Liberator, and you can see that each one is approximately 10 foot long. So we've got one starting here, comes back to here where we have a break, and then we have the second section which comes way back over to here. So that's a very cavernous bomb bay. If you look underneath, it's probably 20-25 plus feet long. Okay, now the engines, as you can see, they're a radial design engine, same as on the Fortress, and exactly the same as the Fortress. Before the aircraft is flown, the propellers have to be pulled through. The engines are twin row radials, but they're considerably easier to pull the propellers. As you can see, it's not that hard to do. And again, we do the radial, we turn the 9 propeller blades, in the rotation the engine will work, and that clears all the oil from the bottom 3 pistons. Farther back from the engine, we have what's called the turbo supercharger. And this is what enables the aircraft engine to still generate maximum power at high altitude. So it's a turbo, so it's driven by the exhaust gases coming from the engine. We have the main undercarriage legs on the Liberator, a lot bigger tyre than on the Fortress, and these legs retract upwards and outwards into the wing. Now I don't know if you can see it at the moment, but later on we'll get a picture and you can see just how big this wing is. It's a very high aspect ratio wing. It's very long and very thin. Now you can see on the side here we've got the number 9. On the outer engine on the other side of the aircraft there's the number 3. Now why would you have 3 and 9 on an engine when there's only 4 engines? Well, the top gun turret operator, he would call out where he could see enemy aircraft coming in using a clock. So pointing towards the front of the aircraft, that's the 12 o'clock position. 3 o'clock's on the right hand side, 6 o'clock is behind, 9 o'clock's on the left. Now because he's able to spin 360 degrees in his gun turret, he can get confused. So all he's got to say is look at the outside engine, hey, number 9. So the enemy aircraft's coming in the 9 o'clock position. He knows where it is. The waist gunners can then turn the guns to the side and he can meet the bad guy coming in. Protecting the side of the Liberator, there's 2 manually operated 50 caliber machine guns, and you can see here there's a sizable opening, probably 3.5 foot in size. Now the difference between the Liberator and the B-17 is the gun position on the Liberator is identical on both sides of the aircraft, but it's a lot roomier aircraft on the inside, so you wouldn't get in the position where the gun operatives would be banging into each other. Interesting to note on the Liberator, you'll see this contraption here. This is a tail bumper. Now the main wheels are very close to the centre of gravity on the aircraft, and what we have to do when we're doing any flights is that skid stays down until the engines are running, and then the airflow from the engines over the wings provides enough lift to lift the back of the tail up and it won't stick. Just behind the waist gun positions, you will see here we have a ladder coming out. This is an escape hatch which would be used by the gunners and the tail gunner if they had to bail out. They could also jump from the main bomb bay doors. The nose gunner would have to come out and could jump from the nose wheel itself. The wheel is retracted. I don't know if you can see, but the nose wheel flaps are painted red on the inside. Do you want to get a picture of that? Can you pick up the red on that? Okay, the nose wheel retract flaps, these are actually spring operated and will not support any weight. Now in flight, with the nose wheel retracted in the centre of the aircraft, if you had to escape from the front of the aircraft, you could jump through this. It will not support any weight in flight, and it's an easiest way out. It saves going... sorry? Okay. Another escape hatch, depending on how you've come down, is just behind the cockpit glazing. There is a hatch in front of the gun turret on top. I don't know whether you'll see that. Well, yeah, where the flag's coming out. Yeah, where the flag is currently sighted, that's an escape hatch coming out of the top of the aircraft, immediately behind the pilots and in front of the top gun turret.
So this is spring-loaded. It means that you step on that thing, you're going out.
Absolutely. That's why we've got it painted red. Now, if you're flying with us, if you're flying with the aircraft, one of the parts of the safety brief is don't touch anything red. Red means danger. Now, in flight, when you crawl, and it is a crawl, from the back of the aircraft to go towards the front gun turret, you bypass the wheel, which is still spinning because it's not braked straight after takeoff, and you will clearly see on the inside, do not step on it. These doors will not support your weight. If you step on those, then you'll be on the ground before we are.
You know anything about the twin tails? Anything at all? Okay, let me put you this.
Vaguely, but I don't want to say something wrong.
Let's say this. Okay. Now I haven't asked you any questions. They're going to be general.
Yep. Okay.
And you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Okay.
In your opinion, what was the better aircraft, the 24 or the 17? In your opinion.
Okay. It's a very difficult question. People will often say, you know, which is the best aircraft, the B-24 or the B-17? They were designed to drop bombs. They had the same number of crew stations, but the... how do we work this? The capabilities of the aircraft were markedly different. The B-24 had a much larger bomb bay, so you could say could carry a lot more bombs. But the more bombs you carry, then the less range you've got. The B-17 had a smaller bomb bay, but had a potentially greater range. So protecting the back of the B-24 Liberator, we have another gun turret. Now the major difference between this aircraft and the B-17 is this turret is powered. And this turret is actually powered on this aircraft, and it will, okay, the guns don't fire, but it is possible in flight to sit in the rear gun turret, turn the gun turret left to right, and move the guns up and down. If the 50 calibers were able to be fired, then we could do that. Major difference between the B-24 Liberator and the B-17 is the guns on the back of the B-17 were not powered. They are on this aircraft.
Then how did they operate them?
Okay, the operation of the gun turret, if we can get the camera in, you'll see in the center of the glass there's the gun sight. It's like an early version of today's Xbox controller. It's a little Y-shaped handle, and you tilt it left and right to turn the gun turret left and right, and up and down to make the guns traverse up and down. Now there are also 2 foot pedals in the base of the gun turret, which the gunner could depress, which would speed up his traverse speed from left to right. So if he had a fast attacker coming in from left to right, he could press the right button down and the gun turret will slew a lot faster. Okay. You can see at the back of the aircraft there's a couple of guys looking at some small steps going in. This is actually another escape route out of the back of the aircraft. Now the gun turrets themselves are very tight and very confined, so you cannot wear parachutes at all. So your parachute for the mission would be stored alongside the fuselage. So if you have to get out, you've got to get out of the gun turret, you've got to undo the doors which seal you in, climb to the back, and get your gun, get your parachute, and then open this hatch, which opens inwards. Okay, so a little bit about our Liberator called Witchcraft. She's the world's only fully restored and flying consolidated B-24J Liberator. And its mission, its new mission, is living history. This B-24 flew missions over Europe and the Pacific as a strategic bomber during the Second World War. The Collins Foundation Liberator was built in 1944 at the Consolidated Aircraft Company's Fort Worth, Texas plant. The aircraft was delivered to the US Army Air Force and in October of 1944 was transferred to the Royal Air Force. The B-24 then saw combat in the Pacific Theatre as KH-191 in operations ranging from anti-shipping to bombing and resupply of resistance force operations. At the war's end, Witchcraft was abandoned by the RAF in a bomber graveyard in Kanpur, India, with the assumption that it would not fly again. However, in 1948, the Indian Air Force succeeded in restoring 36 of these B-24s, including this one, 44052, to operational status. These aircraft were then used by the Indians until 1968. For the next 13 years, this aircraft again sat abandoned in India until British aircraft collector Doug Arnold obtained it in 1981. Once in England, the aircraft was advertised for sale in as-is condition. It was poorly. And in 1984, Dr. Robert F. Collins purchased it. After a sea voyage of 3 weeks, the B-24 arrived in Boston and was brought to Stowe, Massachusetts in 4 truckloads. Collins Foundation intended to restore the plane as a static display only, but it was persuaded to restore it to flying status by the local B-24 crewmen. Preliminary restoration work started in 1985, led by Massachusetts volunteers. When Collins decided to make the plane a flying restoration, Witchcraft, as she is called at the moment, was moved to Tom Riley Vintage Aircraft in Kissimmee, Florida, to complete work on the airframe and power plant. The restoration involved complete disassembly of the plane and work on about 80% of the B-24's 1.2 million parts. On September 10, 1989, after more than 5 years of hard work and 97,000 plus man-hours of labour, the B-24 flew for the first time after restoration. Starting in a new life in 1989, our B-24 was painted to honour the original All-American, a 15th Air Force aircraft that flew in Italy with the 461st Bomb Group. In 1998, she was repainted to represent the dragon and his tail, a 5th Air Force B-24 flying in the Pacific Theatre with the 43rd Bomb Group. In 2005, she was repainted as Witchcraft, the colour she wears today, in honour of the Veterans Group, who flew in the European theatre during World War II. The history of the original Witchcraft is a story that legends are made from. Witchcraft, the original, flew an incredible 130 combat missions, never turned back while on a mission, and never had any crewmen injured or killed. This B-24 flies as part of the Wings of Freedom tour, visiting over 110 cities nationwide annually with the B-17 Flying Fortress and a P-51C Mustang. To accomplish this, the Collins Foundation relies solely on contributions and donations to cover the operating cost of over $4,000 per flying hour per aircraft. These contributions ensure that the future of the aircraft and keep it flying as a symbol of American patriotism and as a tool for our future generations to learn more about World War II and aviation history. Okay, the Boeing B-17G model Flying Fortress, the most widely recognized and revered aircraft type of World War II. She takes to the skies again. Our B-17G, serial number 4483575, has been returned to its wartime configuration under the auspices of the non-profit Collins Foundation of Stowe, Massachusetts, and given the name 909. This particular aircraft was built at Long Beach, California by the Douglas Aircraft Company and accepted on April 7, 1945. Although she was too late for combat, she did serve as part of the Air Sea 1st Rescue Squadron and later in the Military Air Transport Service. In April 1952, she was instrumented and subjected to the effects of 3 different nuclear explosions. After a 13-year cool-down period, she was sold as part of an 800-ton scrap pile, and Aircraft Specialities Company began the restoration. Damaged skin was fabricated and replaced on site. Engines and props were stripped, cleaned, repaired and tested. 4,000 feet of new control cable was installed. All electrical wiring and instrumentation was replaced. As she neared completion, the jeers and laughter of those who said she would never fly again faded as the sounds of 4 1,200 horsepower Wright Cyclone engines echoed across the desert, and Yucca Lady, as she was then known, rose as the phoenix and climbed into the sky. For 20 years without a major problem or incident, she served as a firebomber, dropping water and borate on forest fires. She was sold in January 1986 to the Collins Foundation. Restored back to her original wartime configuration by Tom Riley Vintage Aircraft, she represented one of the finest B-17 restorations and won several awards. The B-17 has succeeded in visiting over 2,700 tour stops. This means that millions of people who would otherwise have never seen the Flying Fortress have been able to experience firsthand the plane that helped change the history of the world over This means that millions who had otherwise never seen the Flying Fortress have been able to experience firsthand the plane that helped change the history of the world over 70 plus years ago. The Collins Foundation B-17 was named 909 in honour of a 91st Bomb Group 323rd Squadron plane of the same name, which completed 140 missions without an abort or a loss of a crewman. The original 909 was assigned to combat on February 25, 1944. By April 1945, she had made 18 trips to Berlin, dropped 562,000 pounds of bombs and flown 1,129 hours. She had 21 engine changes, 4 wing panel changes, 15 main gas tank changes and 18 Tokyo tank changes. The Tokyo tank was a long-range fuel tank. She also suffered from considerable flak damage. After European hostilities ceased, 909 with the 600 patched holes flew back to the United States. While the rigours of war never stopped the historic 909, she succumbed at last to the scrapper's guillotine along with thousands of other proud aircraft. This B-17 flies as part of the Wings of Freedom tour, visiting over 120 cities nationwide annually, along with the B-24 Liberator and a P-51 Mustang. To accomplish this, the Collins Foundation relies solely on contributions and donations to cover the operating cost of over $4,000 per flying hour per aircraft. These contributions ensure the future of the aircraft and keep 909 flying as a symbol of American patriotism and as a learning tool for our future generations to learn more about World War II and aviation history. Some details about the B-17. Her wingspan is 103 feet 9.3 inches. She's 74 feet 9 inches in long. Her 4 engines are 1,200 horsepower Wright Cyclone R1820 97 engines. Her maximum speed is 250 miles per hour. Her range is 2,400 miles. Her service ceiling, that's the height she can go to, is 35,000 feet. Empty, she weighs in at 36,135 pounds. Her maximum weight is 72,000 pounds. All in all, there were 12,731 Flying Fortresses built. Her armament consists of 13 M2 .50 caliber Browning machine guns, and she carried a crew of 10. We carry 15 oxygen tanks on this aircraft. Because the aircraft in combat would be flying over 10,000 feet, you have to be on oxygen, otherwise you would pass out. Okay, looking at the rear gun turret, if we can zoom in, you'll see I was mentioning earlier like the Xbox controls for operating the gun turret. You can see how small and confined it is. You would not be able to wear a parachute in there. The parachute would be on the floor, and if the worst came to the worst, you had to escape, you'd have to jackknife out of the gun turret, put your parachute on, and then jump out of the hatch that we came up. Okay. Let me just grab the 2 waist guns. And here we have the manually operated 50 caliber machine guns, 1 each side. And then directly below the camera at the moment is the Sperry ball turret. Now the way into this was through a hatch at the front, and then the gun turret would be lowered hydraulically down into the airflow, and then the gun turret can spin round a full 360 degrees and traverse up and down. You'll see we have more oxygen bottles above and also on the gun turret itself. These boxes on the side, this is where the ammunition for the waste guns was stored, and you can see we can have up to 550 rounds of 50 caliber. Careful when you step down, it's very narrow, but you'll get a good shot along the bomb bay.
Wait. Don't go. This is the safest position right there. The only shot
Right, coming down onto the bomb bay catwalk. Now on the B-17, I said how narrow the catwalk is. You can see here that it's probably about 10 inches wide. We've got a couple of dummy bombs on either side of this catwalk, so you can see how the bombs were stored. Now, I'm not exactly a large guy, but in full flying kit, I've got to try and walk. I can't go forward, I have to go sideways. And it's a tight squeeze, even for me. Now in World War II, with all my flying kit on, my bulky leather jackets, with the oxygen mask that I'm wearing, with the walk-around bottle, with the bomb doors open over the territory if I have to move along here, with the aircraft shaking with turbulence, with the flak coming up, it's a very brave person walks along this walkway. And here we have the pilot's office. Immediately in front of the camera we've got the radio operator's location and the engineer, and you can see in front of you the controls for the throttles, the turbo superchargers for the engines, and in the roof you can see slightly to the left of the gun turret, which is sitting up in front of you, the emergency escape hatch. And if we pan down, we then go beneath the cockpit floor and forward to the nose wheel. Now the front gun turret has accessed through here, and the bomb aimer's position is accessed through this location. Now again, in the event of a bailout, the two guys at the front have got to come back through the side past the nose wheel all the way back to here to jump. There was no armour protection inside the Liberator, and what you would find would happen sometimes is the flight crew or the pilots would, for want of a better word, rivet armour plate to the outside of the aircraft, and this would be like a 3-foot square along here, so they have some form of protection.